It's a huge honor for me to be here. Thank you all so much for having me. In the spirit of thinking about Homeric heralds, I just wanted to add one more. I hope that both the spirit of Hermes, god of travelers and transitions and journeys, is watching over us, but I also hope that Iris, the goddess of the rainbow, who's the messenger between the gods, is also with us and celebrating all our many colors, our diversity, the many different degrees and different accomplishments that you've all had celebrated here today. So I wanted to start by saying thank you and congratulations, all of you, for your degrees and your many years of hard work. I also wanted to express my condolences. You're now unambiguously grown-ups, and there are no more excuses. This is actually, despite the fact that I have some Oxford degrees, my first time at an insignia. I never went to the graduation ceremonies for my Oxford degrees because I was an idiot. I thought this kind of traditional celebration of a rite of passage, that would feel performative and fake, separate from my own self-important notions about what my education meant to me. To quote the immortal Bob Dylan, I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now. I now realize just how important it is for us in a specific community, a beautiful place like this, and us in the community of mortal human beings, together on this planet for a few revolutions of the sun, to share rituals with one another, recognizing that our individual experience is part of a much larger whole, a much longer history. For most of the Iliad, Achilles refuses to participate in the rituals and shared activities of his community, the banquets, the council meetings, the debates, and the battles. He's so intensely focused on his own individual, monumental, enraging, and in fact irreparable losses. In the final sequence of the poem, he recognizes, and the listener or reader recognizes with him, that opting out doesn't save you from loss or mortality or change. It's through the collective work of ceremonies, whether it's a funeral, a sporting event, a banquet, or a graduation, as well as through the quasi-ceremonial work of narrative, poetry, music, the arts, that we get to recognize how our individual glories and losses are part of a much larger human whole. Today is all about you, the graduands, not just as brilliant individuals, but as a collective, all of us together. So I'm honored to be with you today at this important moment in all of your lives. I also hope you've already absorbed from your rigorous education here an awareness of the limitations of the inherently cheesy genre that I'm delivering right now, the graduation speech, in which the speaker has to tramp through the rich mines of culture and extract some little nuggets of cliché modern wisdom that you could get quicker from the Disney Channel. Like Schliemann, famously bulldozing his way through the priceless archaeological site of ancient Troy in search of his half-baked fantasies about the historicity of the Iliad, and destroying valuable information in the process. So I'm not going to tell you that life is an odyssey, full of twists and turns, manufactured by Honda. The point of reading, studying, researching, debating, living with big, complicated, difficult texts like the Homeric poems, or any of the other big, difficult subjects that you've studied in depth here, is to be with them, to learn for learning's sake, to undergo the whole complex experience, to allow it to change you, to change your vision of the world. I hope you've all been changed by what you've learned here. I also know it's my job to provide a few nuggets of cheese, so I will share with you some principles that guide my work as a translator, some of which I think are also lessons for life in certain ways. The first step in creating a new translation of an ancient text is not to instantly write over the original with my own hideous first draft, but to sit with the original in all its strangeness, to listen. Always remember, there's more to meaning than meaning. You have to dwell with the complexity, dwell with not understanding everything at first. Let the rhythms, the sounds unfold. Slow down and be patient. Notice the things you've taken for granted, either about the Homer, the English language, yourself, the relationship of the past to the present. Unlearn what you think you know. You may feel stuck for hours or days or years. Being stuck is a sign you've met something important that you can't yet make sense of. Stay with it, keep going. Get outside every day. Walking is an important kind of thinking. Pay attention to your feelings, your values, your body, your voice. Notice the gaps between your expectations or projections and what you read or see or hear. You learn to know yourself by meeting the other. You learn to know the other by taking the measure of yourself. When you don't know what you think, write. When you don't know what you've written, try saying it out loud. You'll hear what you don't believe in. Breath has power. Study and respect the authorities. Learn from them. In the case of my own work, that means spending hours with the dictionaries, the commentaries, the scholarship on these ancient texts. But don't expect your ancestors or your parents or your colleagues to feed you the answers that you have to find for yourself. Study the wheel, but invent the airplane. You need your own coherent vision to make any project fly. Also, at some stage, even if it's not perfect, you have to let it go. Meeting deadlines, showing up on time, is part of being honest and trustworthy, not letting other people down. The flawed project that you labor into birth and share with others is always better than the ones you were too scared to finish. Whenever you think you've got it and you know exactly what you're doing, that's when you should reach out for help. Be open and vulnerable enough to learn gratefully from other people when they're generous enough to tell you, you're totally wrong. I couldn't have completed any of my translations without the editors who commissioned them and guided them to publication, the wide array of colleagues, friends, and students who read and commented on my work in progress, always improving it by telling me what was confusing or didn't work. As humans, our lives are very short. Our vision, even for those of us less short-sighted than me, which is very short-sighted, is very limited. Our only hope of understanding anything is to learn from one another. I'm always conscious that my main collaborators are people like Sophocles, Euripides, Seneca, or even Homer, if we can say Homer as a person, who lived in a very distant time, place, culture, spoke languages that haven't been part of a living tradition for thousands of years. My task always entails recognizing their radical strangeness, and at the same time, their full humanity. This is also one of the major themes of both the Odyssey and the Iliad, the need to find connection across difference, to welcome the stranger into our home, to recognize that sometimes, in some places, all of us are strangers. I hope that each of you goes out into the world, wherever the journey takes you, blessed by Hermes, taking with you a curiosity and willingness to extend generosity to people who seem entirely different from you. As we learn from the Odyssey, we need to recognize the strangers who live in every corner of the world, including our own homes. In the Iliad, Priam and Achilles are not just strangers, but deadly enemies, and yet they can, for a few moments, recognize their own pain and mortality in one another. I hope you go through life with an awareness of the capacities for courage, grief, and connection in every person you meet, an awareness that every story can be told and retold a different way. The archaic Greek world, when the Homeric poems were produced, was both very different from the world today and in some ways very similar. It was a time of trade, travel, environmental damage, economic change, instability, population expansion, massive migration, war and territorial conflict, when rhetoric and radical new ideas and new art forms were transforming culture. People were struggling to come to grips with weird new technologies like iron and the revolutionary new IT, which would transform societies and minds, known as the alphabet. The Homeric concept of xenia, of building relationships with people who are not like us, was a response to this distant time of proto-globalization and offers a beautiful invitation to us in our time to embrace the gift of learning from strangers. I hope in your long, happy, productive lives, you'll all open your hearts and find community with strangers both living and dead. I hope you'll open your minds to strange, surprising ideas, including the unexpected elements that might have been taken for granted in your previous life or culture. I hope your deep training in literature and history will enable you to think critically about the changes you'll live through. New isn't always better. Sometimes our most important insights come from a distant past. This is a time of new threats to education, to democracy and truth, not just in the US, where I live, but around the world. I feel moved and inspired to see the thriving of this institution in these times, and to meet so many young, well-educated graduates ready to step out and form this big, complicated, challenging world, armed with these essential skills that you've taken from here: patience, curiosity, attentiveness, dialogue, teamwork, critical thinking, an ability to articulate your own ideas and listen to those of others, to take on big, difficult tasks. The world is changing fast. An old lady like me can hardly begin to imagine what life will be like for you when you're my age. Your years here have equipped you with the best possible training for a changing world. The gift of these years is not that you now know everything, but that now you know how to learn. The ancient Greeks didn't exactly have graduation ceremonies, but they were very good at both ritualized drama and the drama of rituals. They were also good at aphorisms. If you're looking for life lessons to carry with you today or put on your next tattoo, you can't go wrong with the paired maxims from the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. Meden agan, nothing too much, and gnothi seauton, know yourself. Both of these aphorisms speak to an implicit warning. Don't go too far. Don't imagine you can do everything. Don't think you're a god. Remember your mortality. There's nothing wrong with humility, and there's everything right with being brave enough to recognize hard truths. But also, on this day of optimism, and also on every day hereafter, I want you to remember that you are still and forever unlimited as well as limited. You don't always have to play it safe. If you never take risks, you never learn anything. In my life, I'm constantly grateful that when I was your age, very unsure what I wanted to do with my suddenly adult life, I accepted a place in grad school across the Atlantic Ocean in a country I'd never even visited. I picked Yale because it was more or less the only college I'd heard of that wasn't in the UK, and I thought it would be by the sea, which actually it wasn't. In the spirit, it was not based on good thinking, but it was still right to take a chance, and I want you guys to be willing to take chances. And in that spirit, I want to remind you of a third great ancient Greek maxim, ascribed to the Athenian lawmaker Solon, Gerasko, ae didaskon, I grow old, always learning. Awareness of our limitations is often forced on us against our will. We've got no choice about the growing old part if we're lucky enough to stay alive past youth. We do have a choice about learning. You all had a choice to come to college and to stick with it, to get your degrees, and more importantly, to learn, both from your classes, your faculty, and from one another. I hope you'll all decide and keep on deciding that even though your college years may be behind you, you'll never stop learning, growing, experiencing, creating new things in the world, and opening your minds and hearts to the strangers and the strange. Good luck.